Before we start, here's a quick guide from Lord Garbelius. Please drop down in the description, give him your support, jump on his Patreon, check him out. Really good stuff. Thank you, Lord Garbelius. What's up, everybody? Soul here with another Sword of Convallaria video, and today we're going to be taking a look at our boy Magnus. Magnus is fantastic and awesome. He is an Irian unit, he is a defender, and he is also a fortitude unit. This guy is not your typical defender though. He is not a tank per se. He definitely has some healthy aspects that allow him to do a decent job in tanking, but he doesn't really have anything as far as assisting cover and so on and so forth. I think he serves a different role, and I'll elaborate and explain what that is as we go along. Let's take a look at his trait first and foremost. His trait is Experience General. Magnus decreases his attack and defense of all enemies within 3 tiles of himself by 8%. He adds 20% of his physical defense to his physical attack. Pretty great. Now, as you can see, as we star this up at 2 stars, that goes up to 30% of his physical defense to his attack. And then 3 stars, he gets 12% instead of 8% is what he's taken away from his opponents. And then at 4 stars, it becomes 40% of his physical defense up to his physical attack. And then, of course, at 5 stars, he's reducing his opponent's attack and defense by 15% up to 4 tiles away. And he adds that 40% physical defense to his physical attack again. Now, if you're worried about Magnus and you got him, you're trying to figure out where to star him to, as always, if you like him, take him all the way up to 5 stars, just out of principle because you like him. That's fantastic, and there's nothing wrong with that. My suggestion is to stop at 3 stars. 3 stars is a good investment point for him because you're getting that 12% reduction to it in your opponent's attack and defense. Just for him being near him from his trait, you're getting that 30% physical defense to his attack, and I think that's a healthy starting point. At 4 stars, you're getting a 10% bonus to his for his physical defense being added to his attack, but that's inconsequential. Because defense is not an easy stat to raise. As you can see, his is 1300 on mine, and it's what I focus on him. It's not like the attack stat where you get a big hard number from your weapons and items. Your defensive stats actually get a much smaller number, and so it's a lot harder to raise. So, in my opinion, 3 stars is a great stopping point for him. That secondary effect of adding physical defense to his attack really is moot. It doesn't make a huge difference. With that said, let's take a look at his ranks. Now, at rank 1, on the left, you have Offensive Stance. It's an instant support ability that adds 40% of the character's defense to his attack, and he takes 8% more damage for 2 turns. This is interesting and cool. However, I wouldn't suggest it. If you like it, by all means grab it. I would suggest you grabbing Resolve on the right. This is a passive and immediately recovers 5% HP when the character is defeated. It can be activated up to 1 time per battle. So that's nice. It's fantastic. Now at rank 3, you have 2 choices. This is where you might want to spend a Castalia. You don't necessarily have to. I think most people would suggest getting Forceful Cast as his ability as a priority. This is physical damage. Magnus throws the enemy to an empty tile 3 or 4 tiles away from himself, dealing 70% damage to all enemies within 1 tile radius of the target, and inflicts move down 1, and the effect lasts for 2 turns. That's pretty nice. This ability has a lot of utility in that you're able to pick up an opponent and move them, and then on top of that, you're dealing a debuff, and you're also, doing a little damage too as well at that 70%. I think just as worthwhile is his ability on the right, and that is Cry for Victory. It's a passive. When the enemy is defeated within 2 tiles of the character, it inflicts attack down 2 on all enemies within 5 tiles and grants damage 2 up to all allies that lasts for 2 turns. This triggers the effect immediately before using Mountain Breaker, which can be triggered up to 1 time per round. So anytime you use Mountain Breaker, you're basically triggering this. Really, really good. Awesome stuff right there. Now's a good time to mention Mountain Breaker. This is his innate ability. It's a single target attack where Magnus deals 150% damage, and when the target is injured, he also inflicts Isolate before attacking. Magnus restores 2 energy when he defeats the target. This is a great ability. Now at rank 5, you have 2 choices as well. And I wouldn't suggest using a Castalia. You just have to figure out and think carefully which you want to use Magnus as. Now, at rank 5, on the left, you have the Bloodthirsty Axe. This is a reaction. It performs a strike back with a basic attack when hit by an active attack from the front or side. This effect can be activated 1 time per round. For me, this isn't the best in the world. If you want him to do a little extra damage, potentially, if he does get targeted, which I found he doesn't necessarily get targeted a lot, yeah, this is your option. You can always zone and control to where your opponents don't have a choice but to hit him, but you know it's not the biggest deal in the world. There's nothing you can do for him to force them to hit him. That's the drawback, in my opinion. Now, on the other side is what I would choose, because I think it just has more use in general, and that's Hardening. It's a reaction when hit by an active attack. The damage taken is decreased by 8%. After being attacked, the character gains damage reduction 2 for 2 turns, and that's a 20% damage reduction. When he does get hit, and it doesn't matter if it's an AoE or what, it's an active attack, you're getting that bonus, you're getting that buff. That's nice. You are going to get hit, don't get me wrong. It is going to often be from like AoEs, range attack, you name it, and the strike back is a little niche, in my opinion, whereas this has a lot more general utility. Now at rank 7, you have Crushing Bash on the left. Single target attack. It deals 120% damage and inflicts vulnerable 2. This definitely has a lot of utility. If you were to pick it up, there's nothing wrong with that. This bad boy right here definitely has its uses. But for me, I picked Blood and Steel. It's his leadership aura, and it's for all Fortitude units. And of course, it increases attack by 10%, defense by 20%. It's fairly standard, and it decreases damage taken by 10% if healthy. And it becomes all these units become immune to the negative effects of the injured state. Really, really good stuff there with that aura. Now at rank 9, you have Feverish Attack, which of course deals 100% physical damage, and he gains 20% lifesteal. This is something that I've always found to be a little bit lackluster. That 20% lifesteal isn't enough to make it useful and warrant it being chosen, in my opinion. And so I would much rather have Mighty Swing on the left. This is his basic attack that deals 70% AoE damage to all enemies within a 3x2 area in the target's direction. And so that's pretty fantastic. Nice little AoE hit. Remember, when you use an AoE, you get by dodge and things like that. So this definitely has some decent utility, especially if you put on a tuning hammer, you're getting that dispel and so on and so forth. It's really nice. And then up here at rank 11, you have Sharpened Blade on the left. It's passive when performing an active attack. Damage is increased by 10%. And when the character strikes back, damage is increased by 30%. Fairly niche. I wouldn't suggest picking this up. If you want it, there's nothing wrong with that. I would suggest getting Iron Chariot on the right. It's physical damage, single target attack. It deals damage equal to 300% of the character's physical defense, up to 200% of a physical attack. Before attacking, it adds 20% of the character's physical attack to his physical defense for 2 turns. I really like this ability. I used it quite a bit and had a lot of fun with it. And it gave him a way to deal damage and to do good things in battle, on top of being a debuffer for me in teams. Now Magnus, for me, I run primarily as a debuffer, and so I'm going to show you how I have him built. His items I don't change when I change his role, but as a debuffer, I like his abilities to be Mighty Swing, Hardening. I like Iron Chariot on him because he's doing a little extra damage as he's debuffing. And then Resolve, because I want him to be able to survive, especially in in-game content and bigger stuff, and have that survivability. And then the Cry for Victory. I want him up there in the opponent's faces, near them, so when they're dying, this is being triggered. And he's not necessarily the one killing them and triggering it all the time, but he's near enough that it is important. Now, if you don't like Iron Chariot and you want to run Mountain Breaker, this absolutely works in this build. Instead of Iron Chariot, I just really enjoy Iron Chariot. Mountain Breaker definitely does the job, and remember, it triggers that Cry for Victory, so it possibly at times is more effective for actively triggering that debuff more often. And then of course he's getting energy back for defeating him, but there is a 2-turn cooldown on this ability, which that is not reset by him killing and so on and so forth. So Something to think about, but for me, I like Iron Chariot, and then of course, Cry of Victory is the last thing I run on him as that damage dealing debuffer. I think his best in slot is Hollow Axe. I absolutely love this item on him. Of course, we're increasing his defense by 10%, and you gain a bonus physical attack equal to 10% of his physical defense and magical defense at the start of battle. This is an absolute great item on him, and I think, like I said, it's his all-around best axe. Tuning Hammer definitely can do something really cool because of those AoE hits, and you can debuff, basically take those buffs off him, dispel, I should say, not debuff, but dispel those buffs. However, I prefer Hollow Axe for the consistency and the damage and so on in general use. Now Trinket, you have a lot of versatility and choices. Of course, if you're running that strike back, maybe you want that crystal burst armor, but for me, I like cooling powder. I don't like not being able to heal my units that are in the front line and getting taken all the damage, and he absolutely will take that AoE damage and get hit from occasion and so on and so forth. So I want to be able to heal him whenever he does get that and he gets hit by those things. And so yeah, this is what I prefer to run on him. And then of course I'm running on my weapon and trinket the Pentacle Resonance, and that is because I want the highest possible stat roll for that physical defense. As you can see right here on cooling powder, I have a 19% out of possible 20, and that's because I want him to be hardy, healthy, and then that defense is ultimately raising his damage when you're running that Iron Chariot. So really like that on him. And then for the Tarot Whisper, I think you have a lot of flexibility, but for me, I really enjoy using Course of Fortune. There's so much utility in this tarot, and he is out there, he is debuffing. So for him to be able to do the opposite and buff himself and heal everybody around him just gives him even more utility. And then my favorite thing about this Tarot Whisper is of course the chance to recover that energy. And that Iron Chariot and so on and so forth is pretty energy expensive, it's costly, and so he's getting more energy back, and he's more likely to be able to use it more often with this tarot. And so that's what I like on him for that reason. And of course I've got that physical defense percentage up on this with him. Quick shout out to the ability Forceful Cast. If you're running him and you want more utility, I would definitely interchange and replace my Resolve with this Forceful Cast if you need more utility out of him, because that is going to allow you to pick up those opponents and move them and to basically get them out of the way. That is very useful. Maybe you have a terrain that's set on fire. Maybe you have a terrain that's, you know, set, it's got a barrel next to it, and you want them to land on that and ignite the barrel and do damage to them. You name it. There's so much you can do with this ability. And so if you need more utility in a fight and you don't want him to be that straightforward and maybe just focus on the damage and or debuffing, this is a great option to run, and it has, as I've said, great utility. Now, that's what I think of Magnus. I don't think he's your out and out tank. He's not going to do a lot for you if you try to bring him in as a tank. He doesn't have a way to assist cover, and so I think you're better off trying to use him as a damage dealer that debuffs. That's his focus, is debuffing and aiding the team in that way. With that all said, let me show you it in battle and how it looks. And here we go. This is Tower Conquest 9-1. First things first, Magnus comes up. He's got the highest speed on the team right now. He's going to slap with his AoE. Just some simple damage. I want to keep him in range for Coco's Iron Pot Stew. Coco, of course, throws that out there. Sapphire's is going to come up. She's going to set up her ability there because we want to be able to take those hits. Dandelion's going to slap that guy in front of us because he's got those debuffs on him. He does a little extra damage, and it's really nice. Of course, Fake Owl's in the team too, so that he can keep those debuffs on the opponent, and we get that 20% boost to damage from Dandelion's aura. Spy does a great job right there, slap him back. Now here he comes. An Iron Chariot for 11,000 damage. It's pretty decent. I like it a lot. So our Iron Pot Stew off again. Coco comes in with the assisted cover. Now, as you saw when he defeated that unit, they all lost attack, and then all of our units got a damage up. We're seeing it there again, right there. It's triggered. More debuffs from Fakao. Teleport him over. Wham bam slam, thank you ma'am. Right there, almost 13,000 damage with that Iron Chariot. Use an Ancient Potion or Tonic because we want to make sure we give him enough energy to keep going. Sophia does her thing. Go ahead and teleport and move Magnus over because we want the show to be about him. So usually he's just supporting by debuffing. Show's not all about him. He's kind of like a secondary damage dealer. It is nice to see just how capable he is, not only as a debuffer, but a damage dealer. When he walks down here, we're going to get an agent up there. We're going to swap spots with him. As you saw, Dandelion, bear in mind, at low ground, he hit that unit for only like 2,000 or 3,000 damage. Now Magnus is up there. Let's see what kind of damage he does. 8,000, almost 9,000 damage, no crit. So yeah, it's quick and dirty. Magnus is a unique unit in that he's not your straightforward tank. He definitely can take and soak some damage, but it's going to take a little bit of finesse on your side, a little zone of control in order to make that happen to the fullest extent. And so for me, he is your secondary damage dealer or backup damage dealer that debuffs. That's his specialty. You see it here in his trait. He's debuffing his opponents as he's around them and lowering their attack and defense. It's akin to Hasna and what her fragrance does. And he's able to proc this and do more with attack down, which is a hard debuff, and then giving a damage up each time someone dies near him. That is huge. He's mega useful on Iria team comps for that reason, and I've really enjoyed running him in them. I have a lot of fun with Iria. I just like debuffing and messing with my opponents and messing them up. So it's really fun to play with the numbers and to do those things, and he's come in clutch in that way. A huge shout out and thank you to my Patreon members. Thank you so much for allowing me to pull in these units and be able to make these guides and on characters like Magnus that I just recently got. And yeah, if you're interested in joining our Patreon and supporting the channel, make sure you click the link down below. Huge thank you to anyone and everyone that jumps into our Discord. We're really glad to have you in the family. Please make sure you check out the link for that down below as well. We're definitely glad to have you and a part of our conversations and everything we do. And yeah, thank you for making it this far in the video. If you could, drop me a like and a subscribe. It really does a lot for me and helps me out. And I wish you the best of luck in your Sword of Convallaria adventures. Thanks so much for watching. Take it easy. Bye.